The person I'd like to talk about is a person named Ali. 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 And I'd consider him my best friend. And he's originally from Bogdan, Iraq. And going back a little bit, if you had met me maybe 10 years prior, I never had a Middle Eastern friend. I didn't know much about the Middle East. Even going farther back, when 9/11 happened, I was in 8th grade. I didn't have a clue about the Middle East, and I remember hearing, I didn't know what the World Trade Center was even at the time, because how many 8th graders really know about that? And I just remember hearing this lady who was always happy-go-lucky on the radio. She was bawling, and I ran to the other room and asked my dad. I'm like, what's the World Trade Center? And he explained what it was. We turned the TV on, and already at that age, I was kind of wondering, why would someone do this? And at that point, it almost became, I guess, religious, even though I don't consider myself religious, but to kind of figure out after those tragic events happened, who are the people responsible for this? Why would they do this? What is our country gonna do? What could I do? Who am I in this big picture? And it really, I guess, was a turning point where I was starting to learn about myself and also learn about the world. So kind of subconsciously, realistically, my life went on still. Our country went to war. Still learning what does it all mean. And in the back of my head, I always wondered, what is this thing called the Middle East? Why are we there? How do I meet someone from the Middle East? And just how do I move forward and answer this question that's kind of, it's sitting in the back of my mind, but I'm not really taking it seriously going through high school. Maybe I'm just trying to do what a normal high schooler does, just get through the grind. And finally moving forward several years, going into college, I met Ali at community college, and we met in a history class. And he sat behind me with his other friend from Iraq, who was also a friend of mine, Isan. And at first I still didn't know much about the Middle East, and even though in San Diego we have a great Middle Eastern population, and we just kind of started first chatting about the class and asking each other, where are you from, and talking about our backgrounds. And I started kind of letting my guard down, because frankly my guard was up at first, because I wouldn't say that I was racist or prejudiced, but more, I guess, curious and nervous, because I didn't want to come off as racist maybe. So I realized I was maybe even trying a little too hard to be cordial, which I don't think I should be, but that was just what was happening. And just we had mainly we would meet through class, and we never really took it farther beyond that, maybe going to a couple school-related events, but then we lost touch for about a year. I went to university, they were still at community college, and then we actually ran into each other at a class at San Diego State that talked about political violence. And we're like, hey, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. And from then on, we realized that after chatting some more for a couple hours, we had a lot more commonalities than differences. And at the time, I had actually moved forward full bore, where not only was I gaining friends in the Middle Eastern community in San Diego, but I was actively involved in a student-led program called the Olive Tree Initiative, where we study the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because that was something else that I had learned about, and it intrigued me. Why is this happening again? Why are people killing each other? What is the root of the problem besides what the media is feeding us? I truly didn't believe it's about religion. I believe it's about more than that. It's the media, unfortunately, likes to twist things. If it's not bloody or sexy, then they don't want to tell it. And I kind of wanted to become my own investigator with the curious mind and learn more. So through that student-led program, we were simultaneously learning about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in preparation to go to the region. And through that trip, I was able to get sponsorship not only from the school, but from some generous donors, where myself, my wife, and several other students, we went to Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and we also visited the White House complex and the United Nations. And we had the privilege of speaking with community members, people from the far left to the far right, in between, you name it, NGOs, people who were very influential and those who are going to be very influential. It was a chance where not only was I investing in myself, but taking a big risk, because at the time, this is when negotiations were happening between the Palestinian Authority and the Israelis in 2013. And as we were at the White House complex, actually, we had seen one of the Egyptian motorcades, because the Egyptians were helping in the negotiations, that they had arrived to DC. So that was really interesting to see it all really coming together, and it's precursor to our actual trip over there. And I still, though, despite the fact that I was studying the region, I now had friends from the Middle East, and I was slowly breaking down these barriers. I really tried hard to still not have these stereotypes in my head, but at the end of the day, I'm human and I have survival instincts. I also do have a background in self-defense training and certain things, so the red flags were still going up. A reality sunk in when, right before I left, just out of pure safety and planning, I told my parents, hey, in case anything happens, here's where my life insurance is, here's all the important documentation, because you frankly don't know what's going to happen. We get on the plane. Now from our initial trip to DC and New York, we're traveling to Israel. And again, I'm trying to take all preconceived notions out of my head. We arrive to Israel. We arrive in the afternoon. We take a bus actually to Bethlehem in the West Bank, and which is the Palestinian territory. And again, I'm still trying to be relaxed. And I've had the privilege to travel to many countries prior, but this was probably one of the most intense trips at that time, where I was still fairly nervous, but trying to be open-minded. And this is probably not even more than 6 hours after arrival. We get to the West Bank. We decide as a group, we're with this student-led group and some faculty members. We go to a restaurant, have a great meal together near the city square of Bethlehem. We're coming out of the restaurant. We have a faculty member in front of me, about 2 meters behind. I'm there, then my wife and some other students. It's about 9 p.m. We're coming out into an alleyway adjacent to the Bethlehem Square, and everything kind of starts happening in slow motion. And I start seeing a figure moving quick off my right eye towards the faculty member, and I'm like, this is not good. Red flags start going up, and I hear kind of a yelling noise, and I see the faculty member turn. I quickly acquire this individual who's running towards the faculty member, and I see the faculty member raise his hands like this, and I'm like, oh shit, this is happening right now. And I see it's a younger child, probably about 12 to 14 years old, has what appears to me from my training and background, Beretta pistol, black, real, and he's about 3 to 4 feet in front of me, and then even closer to the faculty member. And just instinctively, I'm like, it's really happening. And the faculty member, I could tell he was scared. Realistically, I was scared, but at the same time, in the heat of the moment and based on my training, the individual quickly turned to me and pointed the gun at me. And as soon as he pointed it at me, I quickly just, based on my training, grabbed grabbed his wrist, grabbed the gun, and just disarmed him. Thankfully, it worked out, and I tried to break his arms at the same time. Didn't work. And then after I kind of pushed him away, I realized, damn it, this is a toy. But it looked very real, thought the thing was very real, and I'm like, someone could have got killed, hurt, who knows what. I thought I was gonna maybe get shot. That was just my welcoming to the Middle East. And from there, afterwards, we laughed about it. I just threw the toy gun into the street. The kid ran away. Some of the locals laughed. And despite that, I guess I would say obstacle, I still knew what I was doing in the region was more than me. I mean, it was still exploration and discovery for me, but I knew I had to keep pushing, and this was barely 6 hours into the actual Middle East part of the trip. And one of the people I met on the journey was our guide named George. And George was a Palestinian Christian who was our guide to ensure that we had all arrangements taken care of, as well as guide us within the West Bank areas. And over that time, I befriended George. Frankly, with my background, it's hard for me to trust people initially, but especially under the circumstances, I was even more cautious than normal. And George took a chance on me, I felt, because I felt he was very genuine. I feel that I'm good at reading people, but George passed my test, let's just say that. And there were a couple moments where also I quickly let him know that I felt something was happening based on signals I saw some of the community members making for what could have been a potential imminent attack. But because he made sure that we were safe the whole time, I started gaining more trust with him. And what really, I think, helped was when he invited me to his home, myself and other students, and I met his family. And that was very powerful as well, because in his position, I don't blame him if he doesn't trust outsiders as well, because I learned through this instance that the Palestinians have gone through many difficulties, as well as others in the region. Moving forward a little bit, after befriending George and learning to trust him, I felt that this was someone I don't mind crossing paths with this person in the future. And we were on our second to last day. Many things happened throughout the trip, but moving forward, many things happened. And on the second to last day, I had overheard someone from the American group, I won't name names, but I was getting onto the bus back from Ramallah, and we were heading back to, where was it? Oh, we're actually traveling back to Jerusalem. And they said, someone had brought up concerns about George, and they said, oh, don't worry about him, he's just Palestinian. And that just pissed me off. I was pretty livid. My emotions got to me, but I realized that getting physically or in a confrontation wouldn't solve anything. But it was not only disappointing, but also learning that this is someone that I befriended, who protected me, who showed me their family, their home, their kindness, generosity. I learned that it made me want to try even harder, not only being that I represented the United States as a student diplomat, that we need to do more to bridge the gaps, to understand other people, as well as to check ourselves and how we present ourselves, because I can only imagine, if he had even heard that comment, what that would do to the relationships that were built by other people to even get him to put his life on the line, to always be that liaison with American students and American people coming to the region. And that was a situation where my barriers came down even more, and it inspired me to do more with diplomacy, international relations, community building, things of that nature. Now, moving back to my friend Ali, when I came back to the US, it took me a while to process that whole trip. I actually came back with more questions than answers, and I had to write a paper about it, and I thought it was kind of silly because the paper was due a week later, and I said, this is going to take me months to process, if not years. I'm still processing it to this day. And I talked to my friend Ali about it, and I realized that as soon as I came home, as much as I want to do work abroad, I realized that we have a huge Middle Eastern population in San Diego. And I thought to myself, I need to do something at home, because we have plenty of people here who are suffering. There's issues. I started organizing trips to the Islamic Center of San Diego. I started getting more active with the Middle Eastern community in El Cajon, and we started developing projects on how to conduct outreach and liaison without raising any concerns or breaking any laws. I respect the laws that our government has in place. However, it is important to have those intercultural relations built across communities, and show that people are not as scary as we may perceive, but also that we have more in common, and we need to do more together, whether it's simply going out for a dinner, to visiting one's place of worship, to learning another language and laughing about how our pronunciations might be a little funny and have a little accent. But in the end, I continue my journey now with my friend Ali. We've struggled together. We've been angry with each other. We've done many things together that I want to use it as a story to share, because I want to show that it's possible to befriend people with a background you may have never thought you'd befriend. I've learned so much from him. I've shared many things with him as well, and I think that's what I want to leave for the community, that we really need to take risks on each other. It's not always going to work out. It's not always going to be pretty, but that's what needs to be done.